Okay, so right now I want to talk a little bit about Edward Snowden and the recent stuff that he's come out with. It's not really telling us anything that we don't already know about what the government's been doing over the last 20 some odd years, right? But the thing is, it's verification. This guy is relatively young as far as the game goes, but obviously competent enough in the computer world that he promoted quickly through stuff and that he was involved with as a systems administrator for intelligence related databases. I don't see him as an operations guy. Apparently he wasn't. He was one of the egghead systems administrator types. But as a high level systems administrator, he did get to see a lot. And one of the things we need to understand that he's probably seen much more of than anybody else out there is the nature of the information requests on certain individuals, because those tend to be, they have to be cleared through somebody usually. Usually somebody works very close with the systems administrator. So let's say somebody within the government, the NSA gets curious about somebody. He's going to be the guy who sees that request and sees the request for what somebody's asking for. Kind of like in that TV show 24. He's not your Jack Bauer guy. He's the guy at the computer who's taking the orders and gets to find out what everybody else wants to know. Does it mean he knows everything? Of course not. No single human being can hold all of that intelligence data, but he does know what they're asking about, and then of course accesses it through the computers. Yeah, so he was not, I don't see him as a person who was a major decision maker within the CIA. So for a lot of the talk out there, people calling him a traitor, people saying he's done all this bad and evil stuff because he's disclosing the abuses that are going on, and not so much disclosing it, because we know that a lot of this has been going on, but we need to also understand that he had history with the CIA, but was not working for the CIA at the time that he did all of his disclosures. And it's very important to understand that he got hired by the NSA, which is at this stage in the game mainly domestic, away from the CIA. And we also have to look at how CIA recruitment generally works. CIA is tending to recruit people with a certain ethical background. You do need ethics to work for them. I went out for that stuff, and apparently for whatever reason, I didn't fit the psychological profile they were looking for at the time, and of course the rest is history. I don't feel ashamed to say that. There's a lot of people that say, hey, you flunked out of a program, you're bullshit. On the other hand, getting kicked off of a losing team isn't exactly the biggest shame in the world. So anyway, when you look at the comparisons between him and somebody who actually was a decision maker and the types of things that they're going to say, and where somebody, let's say the Alex Jones crowd, wants to become alarmist about what these revelations would be, we also have to look at the fact that we're talking about somebody who's crossed over from the CIA to another agency. And when somebody crosses over from the CIA to something else, there's this perception on the part of the other agency that they've purchased a piece of the CIA. And that's definitely not the case. And I can tell you that's definitely not the case with a lot of things. You know, if you hire a CIA guy and then start prying him for intel and knowledge on his previous employment, you can run into problems unless you're the NSA. But the ethic and a belief system on that a lot of times is so deep that, yeah, they will retaliate against your agency. If they really feel that their CIA background is being wrongfully used, or certain skills and resources are being wrongfully used, they'll retaliate against you for it. And I think to some degree that's what Edward Snowden is doing. They talk about him being in the Electronic Frontier Foundation. They talk about him being involved with the Tor project. There's some allegations of his girlfriend having been involved with Anonymous or Occupy at some point. Those things are all actually not inconsistent with CIA and intelligence service personnel. They are in the United States generally recruited on the basis of ideology. That ideology and the ethics of it may be twisted depending on what branches and parts they're in, but it's still there. So, but we can talk about a former CIA guy who's been purchased by the Arabs, which happens all the time. Those guys very frequently. For Snowden to go and seek refuge in Hong Kong, I personally think he's probably seeking refuge not so much with the Chinese government, but with one of the triad factions that was ripped off recently in a bond scandal, because the triad factions are associated with the Masonic, the old school Masonic people, not necessarily these so-called Illuminati devil worshipper crowd. The the rapper, the people that Mark Dice talks about, that's not necessarily the triads and some of the Asian Masonic groups. But what I have been saying in some forums for quite a long time is that Anonymous is a product of an undercurrent of dissent among the CIA. And I think a lot of what Snowden is doing was part of a fallback plan to shut down that infrastructure of tyranny that was being built during the war on terror. And as it continues, even though Osama bin Laden is dead, they somehow, some way, that thing needs to be shut down, even though the exchange of presidential administrations is such that the people who get involved in the idea of taking office in the United States and then having a turnkey tyranny infrastructure, it's an infrastructure that a lot of people are saying you can't monitor it, it's too tempting, that it actually needs to be dismantled to some degree. And that's one of the reasons things like the Tor project have gone forward. That was one of the reasons the internet had gone forward. The original intent of the internet was for a communication system that could function in between occupied and unoccupied North America during and after a nuclear exchange or major civil war or something to that effect. So we also have to look at the creators of the internet as really the predecessors of this guy here. But let's look at Al Jazeera, and this guy they've managed to purchase, Robert Greener, former CIA station chief, the financial consultancy firm, which means if you have money, he's for sale. Okay, let's just say that and say it for what it is. Okay, if you have money, he's connected, he's for sale. Don't think it's too, and it's a French name, right? Grenier. That's a French name. You shouldn't have to go too far to examine the character of those people. So anyway, I'll put it this way: we don't reach too incredibly far back in history. Let's say late 30s, early 40s, to examine the character of those people and how they treat their alliances. Anyway, the situation with him, and we look at the domestic angle on this, is immediately after the Boston Marathon bombings, this guy starts talking. And it's interesting because on the Al Jazeera, they are saying comments disabled on a video. Now, I don't want to go violating anybody's terms of use, but you can fast forward up to about the 25-second mark on this video and hear this guy talking and speculating out loud that this was a domestic terrorist action and why he thinks maybe it was some kind of anti-tax patriot group. But you have to understand, this guy was a station chief somewhere. This is a kind of a guy with some rank and some importance. And other people like him are still making decisions within those agencies. So in the wake of the Boston bombing, you can guarantee that whole infrastructure of tyranny was put in overdrive as hit lists were created, shit lists were created. And don't forget, a hit list isn't just for assassination. It can also just be for extensive criminal investigations or orchestrating things which somebody would say, well, we don't know if this guy's guilty or not. We don't know if he's up to something or not, but it's safer to felonize the individual than to let him go. And we have all this intel. We know what's going on with his business. We know what's going on with his family. We can insert somebody into that situation who's going in with a lot of information, old school Mission Impossible style. I'm not talking about the new movie series, but the old TV show series where, you know, somebody in kind of a quasi-deniable situation, you know, the secretary will deny your mission, but here's a file on the individual, go set them up and make this thing happen. That's what the intelligence community creates during peacetime. The wartime intelligence works a little differently but let's say here in the United States, there is no current openly declared martial law. So it's still basically a peacetime, really a Cold War between the American people and the federal government. But understand the mentality that's going to be in control of things like these master hit lists and things like that we realize are part of the program now. This is a guy, in his own words, who's a shot caller in a lot of that kind of stuff. And this is in the wake of the Boston Marathon bombings. The date on this was before it was disclosed that it was the Tsarnaev brothers who did it.
Yeah, the timing of the event, as has already been pointed out, this is Patriots' Day in Boston. This is the day when they commemorate the battles of Lexington and Concord, which were the first two battles of the American Revolution. Hadn't even been declared yet, but these were the first violent acts where Americans came together to try to throw those at the time. So one wonders if perhaps there might not be a domestic right-wing terrorist component to this.
Let's back this up a little bit more and hear this dickhead say it again.
Component to this. People who are feeling oppressed by the federal government now choosing the celebration of an effort to overthrow the bonds of oppression to make a point having to do with domestic politics in the United States. Again, that's only speculation.
Yeah, again, it's only speculation. That's like, oh, we're just saying. Well, that's like just saying we want to put hits out on all these people because, I mean, let's face it, it's a lynch mob type of mentality. It's just that when it's, intelligent, sophisticated people that want to rile up a lynch mob, it looks and sounds like this guy. So when we talk about the other feds are talking about wanting to do some kind of a lynch mob against Edward Snowden, and a lot of other political people are saying they want his head on a platter over it. Realize they're not asking for anybody's head on a platter if they're selling themselves to, if they're selling themselves to the Al Qaeda spokespeople and that sort of a thing to buy a little bit of time for, let's say, an Arab-based operation to continue. What if this guy's running interference for the Tsarnaev brothers? He probably had no personal connection with them, but while Al Jazeera is running interference for the Tsarnaev brothers, these guys are going to mobilize that whole spy apparatus domestically, while mosques don't get spied on, while in Michigan you've got a lot of those people are actually in charge of the FBI and in charge of those types of operations. That's why you're going to hear about people like the Houthis being rounded up and arrested for an event that wasn't taking place, whereas when the bombing does happen, these people are wanting to mobilize the infrastructure against Americans who have a problem with the tax code. So when I look at Edward Snowden, is he a hero? Yeah, I think he is. At least he's trying hard to be a hero. Is he giving us a bunch of revelations that we didn't already know? No, I don't think so. But what he is telling us is he's verifying. He's verifying a lot of what Alex Jones had said. He's actually verifying a lot of what even Mark Turnkey had been saying 20 years ago. And that's not even getting into some of these master hit lists, which I understand have up to 11 million names on them now. So there is something you can do about the Snowden situation. There are, at the White House, there's a petition thing here, and it's part of the master public record for the United States. The stuff, once it's in, it doesn't go away. And I've signed the petition. You can sign on. You have to sign on, create an account. If you're not willing to make your voice known at the White House, at least semi-anonymously, then gee whiz, get off the program then. You watched it this far. If you want to do something, it's easy, it's cheap, it's straight up. You can add your signature to the list. All that gets posted is your initials. Does the White House eventually know? Yeah. What's going to matter on this is to get it above 100,000 very quickly. Let's see if I renew. And it's interesting, the account. I think it's just because it signed me out. But, and I do think the count on these gets a little bit suppressed. So I'm going to make another little short video on the pardon Edward Snowden situation. Yes, I do consider him a hero. I'm glad that he's come forward. He's not whoring himself to Al Jazeera the way a lot of these other guys are. And I'd venture to guess Snowden isn't a French name too. But all right, I'm not supposed to talk hatred against any particular classes of people. The French are good for some things like food and porn, I guess. But anyway, we'll talk more in the next video.